Wain Choi, ladies and gentlemen, Chief Creative Officer at CJK Valley, is here with us. He's a man who needs no introduction to the creative world. He's won himself so many awards, including many at Cannes Lions, D&AD, Clio's, at the Ad Fest. He's served extensive jury duties at the Cannes Lions, D&AD, Clio's, and the NY Festivals of the Best of Advertising. He's a big talent. Put your hands together once again for him. Mr. Ori, take it on from here.
Hello. So Wain, we're going to be talking about the challenge of the digital age and really about brands being more human. And I said, what's the better way to start this interview by really getting to know Wain a little better? Because finally, when you look at brands and you're saying you want brands to be more human, I think the most important thing in this is knowability. It's really about knowing your consumers or customers as people, as human beings. So let's talk about this, Wain, and let's try and understand who's Wain as a human being. So tell us something about your, ups and downs, your biggest challenges in life.
After being sitting down with Amelia, 15-year-old, I feel very old being up here. But I'll give you a bit of, how I became to be here at GoFest. And, it wasn't always, hey, I wanted to get into advertising. It's really been a long journey. I was born in Seoul, but at the age of 9, our family decided to move to Canada in Toronto. And as a Korean family, as a parent, this is what you expect from your kids. Be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. I'm pretty sure it's similar in India. So I was neither any one of them I wanted to do. And I don't think I had the ability to do any of them. But I wanted to go to university, and the only way my parents will pay for my tuition was if I went into business or something similar in that field. So I did go into business my first year, and I was horrible at it. And what I did was I changed my major to fine arts, and which was very, very relevant to who I was. But I never told my parents till I finished 4 years. And then when I finished fine arts, and at that time, my girlfriend back then, she's my wife now, and she said, actually, you should do something else, because with your fine arts, there's only 2 things that you could do: teaching in high school or be a starving artist. And I think I have a better vision for you. And then I applied to Ontario College of Design in Toronto, which I didn't know anything about. I didn't know what advertising was. My wife, or my girlfriend back then, she knew. So I applied, and then I waited. And at that time, I took about a 9-month break, and I was working at a steel factory. And I was making good money back then. It was like $13 an hour. This is way, way back. So this was very good money for me. And I waited, and then I got a call from Ontario College of Design and said, you've been accepted. And then I did another 4 years of design and advertising. And my first gig was at Ogilvy as an intern. And then after that, I never had any other jobs than as a creative in this field.
Wow, that's great. The other interesting thing about Wain is that I always thought, creatives with sexy ideas were, the best things in the industry. But this man, apart from sexy ideas, is also, one of the sexiest men in advertising. So would you talk about that?
It wasn't something that I entered or anything like that. So I happened to be in a meeting with one of the clients. They happened to be Samsung, and they wanted to introduce me to their, to VPs, and then they put up something, and I think it was from 2012 and 2013. It was a Business Insider, and actually they've done a survey, 50th hottest in ad industry, and I happened to be there 19th. I remember that. And then it kind of stuck with everyone. So whenever they're introducing me, they never introduce me as a, Cannes Gold winner or D&AD Gold or, one show. It was more about that. So it became a bit of a joke, but then, it's better than being the ugliest. So, I kind of kept it. Yeah.
True.
It's the credit goes to my parents. I had nothing to do with it, I guess. Yeah.
So that's great. So let's dive right into the session. And really, building on what I was really talking about in the context of Wain, was when we look at brands, really, the whole thing about making brands more human, more relevant, more connected in today's world is perhaps, the biggest challenge when you think about technology and where technology is actually creating, challenges of, human connections. So one of the things that Wain and I were talking this morning was really about, knowing your consumers as human beings. And this people-first thinking is something that I'd really want Wain to talk about.
Yes, but almost 5 years ago, Samsung Electronics Mobile, they put us on a pitch with Jael versus Leo Burnett. And at that time, the challenge and the brief was, we want to be an aspirational brand, very similar to Coca-Cola, P&G, and Coca-Cola has the belief, even now, after 100 years, I think it's about Coke believes the world would be a better place if we saw the world half full rather than half empty. It's always about positivity. But Samsung at that moment, yes, it was the biggest electronic company and big technology company, but no one really thought it was a warm company that you could be a friend to. So the challenge for us was to come back to them with a pitch, with an idea, how do we make the company warmer? And one of the ideas that we presented, obviously we won, and then the whole idea is you plus technology equals amazing starts. So it was always about the people. And if you know anything about mobile launches or any electronic launches, there's a CES that happens in every January in Vegas, and there's an MWC that happens in Barcelona in February, March, and then there's one in April in IFA that's in Berlin. And all other companies, electronic companies, were launching products. And what we did as an idea is we would actually want to launch people, you as an individual, rather than a product.
Should you want to show the film?
So I'd like to share a story about a real person, Austrian, he's been working all his life in a hydro plant, and his love for his real life is actually being a photographer. And we found his story, and he happens to be in traveling in India and taking photos. And then taking photos with DSLR camera could be very cumbersome, and it could be very obtrusive to the subject. And here's a story about Alfred. And if we can play the first video.
He was with his family, and he had such a beautiful face, I couldn't resist to take his picture. I have a good life. I'm married since over 30 years. I work at the hydropower station. When I'm walking to my office, there is a lot of time for thinking about India. I remember and saying, if you want to take good pictures, you have to leave home. And that's what I'm doing. Everybody needs a hobby, and it's my hobby since over 30 years. I had a lot of cameras. I had my own darkroom. Now with the smartphone, I have it everywhere with me. You are not recognized as a photographer. You're almost invisible. is human, and I try to show his life in his face, the face where you can see the life. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what I love. There was a mobile photography competition. It was worldwide, but I thought, give it a try, and suddenly I won. I couldn't believe it. It was a dream when I was 20, 25 to start a career as a professional photographer. I never thought that this will happen, but now maybe we'll see.
So that's really a wonderful example of how, when you look at it, it's really about understanding the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of your target audience as human beings. And here it's really not about launching a phone, it's really about launching dreams and aspirations of people. So my next question to you, Wayne, is really about, one of the things about brands and being more human is generally showing more compassion, more understanding, more humanity. And oftentimes that's quite a challenge for brands, right? Who are, have many targets and budgets to kind of meet. So it becomes quite difficult. So in your experience, could you give us some examples of where, brands that you worked on really looked at connecting on a human level with great compassion, understanding, and a certain degree of intimacy?
I mean, most of advertisers, I'm sure, there's some of you in here, and I think it's, as an advertiser, when we produce a product, we get very excited, and we want to talk about all the key features. The camera functions, how thin it is, how wide it is, how small it is, and then the resolution of it. I think it's all great. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do product feature advertising or communication, but I think before that, I think people need to know who you are as a company. And talking about nuts and bolts, the technology could always be copied and get better. So you can't really have ownership to it. There's always going to be a better smartphone that's out there. There's always going to be a better television set that's out there. And I think what we need to do is to really connect technology that's meaningful. The technology for technology's sake is meaningless. The technology has to mean something. And the next piece that I'd like to share with you have a little bit of story. And we wanted to keep the brand warm, and we wanted to show how technology can bring loved ones together. And this is a story, so the idea didn't really come from me or the team that we were working with. The insight came from a father. He happens to be a very famous singer in Korea. And we interviewed him because we wanted to figure out how we can make an application that can bring loved ones together. And he would say, I would walk around in the city of Seoul, and everyone looks at me because I'm very famous. But when he comes home, his 8-year-old son doesn't look at him because he's autistic. And he was very heartfelt, and what we wanted to do was produce an application that can bring loved ones together. And if you could do that through technology, you can do anything, and it becomes a meaningful technology. So I would love to share a second case film with you. So if you guys can play the number 2, please. Thank you.
종현이는 엄마인 저와도 눈맞춤을 하기 힘들어해요. 그럴 때면 우리 둘 사이에 보이지 않는 벽 같은 게 있는 건 아닌가, 그런 생각이 들죠. 종현아, 엄마가 아닌 다른 사람들과도 잘 지내야 되는데 새로운 친구들도 사귀고 낯선 사람들과 어우러져서 세상을 살 수 있을까 걱정이 많이 되죠.
Millions who suffer from autism don't make eye contact and have poor interaction skills. But studies show that children with autism like to interact with digital devices. So we gathered professors, doctors, and UX designers to develop a program called Look at Me. A fun and easy-to-use app to help children with autism make eye contact, read facial expressions, and express their emotions. Jonghyun and 19 children trained on the program. 60% of the group showed improvement in making eye contact and identifying emotional expressions more easily.
처음엔 잘 몰랐는데 요즘은 정말 달라졌다라는 게 느껴져요. 표정이 훨씬 다양하면서 자연스러워졌고 이젠 나를 엄마로 바라봐주는 느낌이 들어요. 이렇게 눈을 보면서 얘기하니까 우리 둘 사이가 더 가까워진 것 같아요.
I mean, the real heroine in this story is not what we did or what Samsung has done. It's really the mother was the heroine because for Korean culture to share their weaknesses, especially their children, is almost unheard of. And when we interviewed her and when I spoke with her, and she said, with this type of application, if we could, get a kid or daughter or son to be closer to their loved ones, I would love to do this. So she was amazing, and she didn't mind putting her son into this situation where millions of people could actually see this. So she was credit to when we started this project.
That's beautiful, really, really nice. So my next question to you, Wain, is, part of this whole thing about being more human in the world of brands is really about brands as friends. And every brand wants to be friends with their consumers, right, or customers. But there are very few brands who actually manage to do that with a great deal of authenticity. Because friendship is something that is, difficult to come by, and it's only a very human-to-human thing. So brands as friends, in your opinion, how would you see that?
I mean, especially these days with the social media, we have maybe 1,000 or 2,000 more friends than when I was growing up without the internet or Facebook or Instagram. But we all know when it comes down to a crunch time, there's maybe not even a handful of friends who would actually be there for you. And for brand to say, hey, we're your friend, everyone's gonna say it's BS. So what we wanted to do was, one of the technologies that are right now, it's growing very fast and it's getting modified to get better and better is the virtual reality, VR. And what we wanted to do was, we all have fears or some of the things that we cannot do. I think there are people who are afraid of spiders, and they truly are afraid of spiders. And there's some people who are afraid of heights. And there are people who are afraid of what we do on this stage. And I was never really good at being on the stage and then be able to talk to everyone. It comes out of 10,000 hours, but no one likes to be on the stage when everyone's looking at you and try to make any sense of it. So one of the things that we wanted to do was, VR has always been more about entertainment. It's about gaming, but we wanted to make a brand that talks about, hey, if you have certain fears in your life, we wanted to be your support. We wanted to help you to overcome some of the things. So here's next case film where we launched it globally, and we picked certain candidates who are afraid of height. And we took them through a few weeks of desensitizing through virtual reality. So if we can play the number 3 case film.
Yeah.
all I can think about is that the building will collapse.
Of course, it's embarrassing sometimes.
I just want to run away, and I don't know how to deal with my fear.
Being afraid of heights limits many aspects of people's lives, but only very few are willing to talk about it. Be Fearless, the first virtual reality platform to overcome fears. Studies show that with constant practice, people can conquer their fear of heights. We collaborated with VR experts and psychologists to develop a unique VR program. In increasing levels, users are confronted with their fears. For the first time, an app analyzes heart rate and eye movement to give instant and personalized feedback.
Try to look down more often.
And best of all, users can train in the comfort of their homes and at their own pace. This allows them to focus on personal goals.
You've conquered your fear of heights.
In a 14-day test with 82 participants, over 80% successfully reduced their fear.
Ich merke, dass ich mir immer mehr zutraue, dass ich Dinge geschafft habe, dass ich Dinge zurücklassen kann und sagen kann, okay, jetzt gehe ich einen Schritt weiter, jetzt gehe ich höher.
Be Fearless did not only launch the discussion in Germany of how technology improves our lives, it also convinced press and experts worldwide that virtual reality can be much more than just entertainment.
So when we were looking at this topic, we said, you know, what's the big deal about being more human? After all, there's some human beings talking to human beings, or human beings selling products to human beings. Technology is merely a tool. What really matters and what the magic is all about is really understanding, insight, and making the relevant connections, right? So my question to you, Wain, is really about, you know, on this human-to-human level, what's the, you know, the power of insight and the power of observation and the power of just knowing your consumers as human beings?
I think more and more, you know, with AR, VR, you know, artificial intelligence, you know, we really need to embrace it. I don't think we should be scared of it. It's inevitable that computers will replace a lot of the things that we do, but some of the things that computers can't, I can't say cannot, because at the end, I think computer will become very close to how we think and maybe how we feel as well. But I think till that day comes, I think some of the things with the human insight, some of the things that we deal with day in and day out, these are the small little things that we deal with. You know, we get up and we go to work. We do the same thing from A to B. We drive or take the transit. The things that we do every day. So it's in your routine. So when you do certain things as a routine, we don't really think about it. It's just a reflex. So when you do that, we miss a lot of the things, unfortunately. You know, the phrase, you know, smell the rose. You know, we don't really, we just go by it. Even here, I think we sit beside someone on your left or someone on your right, but you don't really realize how important it can be to a certain insight that we do. So, you know, the next case film that I wanted to show you was, you know, up to now, it's really about developing an application or developing an application for VR. The fourth piece of work that I'd like to share with you is something that doesn't cost a lot of money for an advertiser to do. Because, you know, we as a creative, we always complain, the budget's too small, timing is too tight, we can't do something that's great. And then the next piece is about understanding everyday life, things that happen to you on the way to work. And if you could just, if you see the next piece work, you'll just go, so simple. And I think most of the best ideas are, hey, I could have thought of that. I think it's that kind of stuff. And this is for Burger King in Korea. And the insight is people commute over an hour because everyone wants to work in Seoul. And everyone cannot live in Seoul because of the cost of living. So they live outskirt, probably an hour transit, probably 2 to 3 hours going back and forth. So what happens in the subway is where the idea comes from. So maybe enjoy. Can we play the fourth piece? Thank you.
That was brilliant, wasn't it?
I mean, sometimes it doesn't take a lot. So if there are advertisers here and agencies, creative guys sitting here with AEs, sometimes it's not always about the money and it's not about the timing. And I think it's just very simple things. You know, we see eye mask everywhere we go. I mean, you know, when I came to Goa from Seoul, it was a long, long flight with a long transit wait in Delhi to coming here. And having one of those is easy, but we never really think about, can that be the solution to your problem or your client's problem? And the last piece that I'd like to share with you is very similar. It's for Uniqlo, and they wanted to communicate their technology, heat technology of Uniqlo. And it's very, very difficult to explain it to everyday consumers, you know, without getting into being a very scientist.
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys probably don't have problems in India because you don't have winter, you don't have coldness here, right? Am I correct?
We do.
Oh, you do up north,
yeah,
right?
Of course,
okay.
we do.
But not in Goa, right?
Not in Goa.
But in Korea, we do have 4 seasons, and we do have harsh winter. And we wanted to use something that's already been going on. So the ideas doesn't come from us, from the creative or the agency, but it's something that everyone has been doing this for decades. What it is using a bubble wrap. You know, we know the bubble wraps, we use it to pack, we use it to protect, but they've been doing this. And all we did was, hey, can we take this idea and brand it for Uniqlo and see what happens? And this was during Christmas. And it's a little promotional piece that we handed out to the customers when they were purchasing in Uniqlo. So let's see the last piece.
And just wanted to add there, I think the whole thing about being more human, and that's what Wayne and I were talking about this morning, is really about observing human beings and observing life. And that's where some of the best ideas come from. Can you please play the ad? So before we wind up this session, I think, oh, we're just out of time. It's absolutely in time, but I think while I'm reading these questions, I'll ask you a question as well. CJK Valley, right? That's where you're Chief Creative Officer right now. So tell us something about what you're doing there.
So since end of last year, I left Cheil as a CCO, and I joined a company called CJ. CJ is another big conglomerate company in Korea. And I don't know if you ever watch any Korean films or K-pop, they're actually from CJ, or they have food, so fashion, so more into culture. And K-Valley is a company that I joined beginning of this year. We're actually building a theme park, very similar to Disney, but with the Korean culture. So we would have a theater, and we would have K-pop or Korean dramas. I don't know if you guys watch Korean dramas or Korean pops or movies or food. So we're actually going to create intellectual property that's more about Korea. So if US has Mickey Mouse, we'll have our own characters. So it'll be done in year 22, between 2022 or 23. So we're in a concepting at the moment.
Great. Thank you so much, Wain. I think that was really, really interesting. And now I've got some audience questions. You know the drill, right? I'll ask you 3 questions. You'll answer those 3 questions, and then you'll choose your favorite question, and we'll give that 25,000 rupees to the lucky winner. Okay, so Wain, here's an interesting question. Obviously, this comes from what you started off saying, you know, when we were talking about the sexiest man in creative, right? So what are the 3 most important elements required to win a Cannes? And which is your favorite campaign till date?
Okay. You know, it's quite simple. Whenever I'm being on the judging side or actually doing the conceptualizing, there are the 3 things that I always look for. The first thing is originality. Is it fresh? And then the second one is just being fresh but has no relevance to the brand, it's no good. So the first thing is originality, and second one is relevance to the brand, and then the third one is the execution. Is the execution flawless? If it's a film, is the editing, is the music, is the script, is the talent, the performance. Everything has to be fantastic. So when I look at that, there's one piece that I always think is the best of the best I've seen, and it's called the Epic Split by Volvo, the truck. Yeah. You know, with the Enya music, one take with Jean-Claude Van Damme. When I see it, even if I see it now, I just go, wow, it's fantastic. And I know there's a lot of great films that are out there, but when I see that, I think it's the best.
Thank you. My second question is, with the rising involvement of technology in the creative world, do you think creativity will be automated?
Sorry, can you?
With the rising the rising use of technology in the creative world, do you think creativity will be automated? So you kind of tell a robo, I need a layout, and the robo kind of gives it to you.
We'll be out of a job. What I think is some of the work that I share with you, it's really the 10% of what I do. 90% I don't want to share with you because it's really bad or it's really boring. It's because that's the kind of stuff that we're asked to do sometimes. So it's the meat and potato. It's the blue collar work. So I would say 70 to 90% of the stuff that we do now can be replaced by AI, for sure. It's the 9% and 10% that we see in Goa Fest or Cannes or DNAD. Those are the things that we have to do it. AI will catch up, but that's the type of work that AI cannot do at the moment. But since we are teaching the computers, they may end up doing that. But for the moment, it's the 9 to 10% that we will be holding on to. So sorry, computers out there, we will still be doing that till that day comes.
Absolutely. Or till Amelia comes, right?
Unless the 15-year-old kid, and then there's going to be 9-year-old says, you know, to understand 9-year-old, you have to be 9. But for me, it's not really the age. It's about how you think. If you have 9-year-old kid, then you can be a 9-year-old creative. If you have 60-year-old or 90-year-old grandfather, you can learn from him. So that's our ammunition.
My last question to you is, how do you declutter yourself when you run into a creative roadblock?
Oh, I do. It's every day there's roadblock or writer's block. So what I like to do is I go for a run. And I did that yesterday because I don't, it's first time being in Goa, and it's a nice little walk or run. So for me, I go for a run and really decompose and get everything out. So whenever I have a fight with my wife, or I have a fight with the client, or I have a fight with my CEO, I go for a run. Because when you go for a run, when you come back, so why are we fighting? I forget. So it's really nothing, but having that me time, just running and looking at great scenery, it just cures everything.
Great. So which one would you say is your favorite question?
To be honest, those are all great questions. It's hard for me to pick one, but I would have to pick the second one because I think we are on the edge of our seats, what's going to happen because of technology. And I think the second question really begs, are we replaceable? We're only replaceable if we let it happen. And I think we're really, really smart. And how we teach the computers, we will still be relevant from now to another 100 years. And hopefully we are relevant in another century. So let's hold on to that humanity. And humanity is what's going to keep us from giving our job or our desk to the computers. So I would say number 2 is the winner.
Okay, so that question came from Akshay Kulkarni. Akshay, are you here? Oh, there you are. Wayne was asking me how much is that in dollars, and I was telling him, he said, that's a lot. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Wain Choi. That was a really, really interesting, very enlightening session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I'd request you to please present him with a memento, a token of our appreciation. Thank you once again to Wain Choi. More applause than that. That should just be automatic. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Wain Choi. And thank you, Mr. Rohit Ohri, for doing the honors and steering that session so wonderfully. Thank you very much.